G'day everyone, welcome back to another episode of the Bare Necessities podcast. We're back another week, another episode. Sam, how are you first and foremost?
I'm excellent. We're out of lockdown officially by 6 p.m. No more masks, so that's always exciting. But what's more exciting than that is we got a guest on the show, huge guest. I'd like to welcome investment advisor and among many other things, Jason Sourasis. Am I saying your last name right? Because
you are, Sam. And,
I've been practicing that in the mirror.
No, very good effort. As long as that surname's had every version of it called, so as long as it starts with S, ends with S, I'm generally pretty happy.
Very good. How you been? So what are you up to these days?
Good. So there's plenty going on, that's for sure. So in the family life, first and foremost, got two young kids. So that's been the last one of them's a pandemic child that was born at in effect during I think it was the first lockdown, and
oh God,
has just come out of freedom now. Like, she knows no different. She's only 18 months old. So, but two young kids under 3. So, family life is busy, and my wife and I both, busy lives in our work lives, but also sleep deprived and everything else that comes with having two young kids. So that's pretty busy on the home front, and then on the work front, always lots happening. But especially now we've got our business has got fingers in a lot of different pies, with a couple of them just at the end where we're closing deals and finalising transactions. So pretty busy time all around.
We'll get into that a little bit later. I just wanted to ask just personally, what have you been watching on Netflix recently? Been in lockdown for a while.
Well, this is its own podcast right there. So being sleep deprived, I'm watching all kinds of stuff. But I've gone through the usual that I think everyone's talking about, like clickbait and a few other things. And I'll preface this by saying that Netflix is my social life. That's pretty much all I do, and it's my downtime. So gone through the clickbaits and all the main, everyone's watched, the Homelands and the old from years ago. But I'll tell you one I'm on now, which is, I'll tell you the most random story with it, and hopefully it doesn't take the whole podcast up. But I'm watching one that's called Resurrection Ertugrul. So I've been visiting Mum now that we're allowed to. So every time I go to her place, she's watching these, Netflix series with subtitles. One was one was Korean, one was Spanish, and then this one I've locked up and it's Turkish. And I'm going, what are you watching? And she's glued to this thing. So I said, all right, I'll give it a crack. And then started watching it. So, and on IMDb, it's like a 9 out of 10, which you don't get 9 out of 10.
No, that's really rare.
Yeah. So and I was thinking, what is this thing? So I started watching it. So Resurrection Ertugrul. Got into it, and then can't stop watching it. And it's not like a clickbait that we finished in 4 or 5 days. It was 10 episodes. This thing, series 1, has 75 episodes.
Oh, Jesus.
Series 1, and it's 6 series. So I think it's the equivalent of a Braveheart, sort of version, Turkish version of Braveheart's what I'll call it.
Yeah.
But ultimately, if someone told me A, it'd be addictive, B, 75 episodes, but 5 series of it, I wouldn't have watched it. But now that I am watching it, it's highly recommended. And I went in not knowing anything about it, but it's worth a watch. So Resurrection Ertugrul, and then a few other ones that I've been watching too. But that's my main one at the moment.
Very good, very good.
Interesting. What's your opinion on subtitles, like the foreign sort of shows and stuff like that, where we obviously can't understand what they're saying? What's your opinion on the subtitles?
And these are all their own podcasts. These are conversations. But I watched Squid Game, not knowing that you could have watched it in So I watched it with the subtitles, and even Ertugrul, I'm watching it with subtitles. So A, it needs a lot more concentration. But B, what I've worked out is just by some of the subtitles that aren't actually, the actual English isn't in proper English, that it's probably not getting translated the way it should, obviously. But the point of the show is coming across the right way. So well, obviously if we knew other languages, we just listen and watch them, but we don't. But so it's a necessary evil. But I think half the time these subtitles are made up and probably make up their own storyline, and we're watching a different storyline reading the subtitles of what's actually happening. But necessary evil.
So just back on your work now, I'm guessing you didn't want to be an investment advisor, sort of like that sort of thing when you were growing up. Did you have like a dream job when you were little?
Do you know what? I've been asked this a couple of times, and it's sort of, I don't think anyone really knows with certainty what you want to be, especially when you're young. When I was young, I was a Fitzroy supporter back in the day, so I was Paul Roos or Bernie Quinlan. That was the only job for me. So I was a sport nut growing up. Yeah. And then even studying, I studied economics, majored in banking and finance, but that's what Mum did as well. So I think your parents, and people close to you have a strong influence over what you think you need to be or want to be. So even just seeing that mum was she was in finance, equities, studied. I literally have followed her direct path. Same university at La Trobe. We both studied economics. We both majored in banking and finance. Not because she pushed me. I said I had to. It was just they're the subjects that I fell into, and that she was doing it, so I saw it all the time. And then when I graduated, still had no idea. I wasn't even interested in economics or, and I don't think I've ever used anything from economics in my work life. But it's one of those, even now when we hire people, it's probably just more the discipline to finish uni. Like I've got so many friends that I went to uni with that never finished, that have gone on to do so many different things. But just the discipline to finish uni was an achievement. And then when you get into the workforce, you know what, it's a trial and error to a certain degree. I've done 4 or 5 different jobs before I fell into what I was doing. Always had a passion for investment and stock market and equities and what have you. So a lot of the jobs I've had, I suppose, have added to that. Like I still remember my first role was with QBE, Trade Indemnity, which then led on to a job when I worked in London, which was in effect reading balance sheets and understanding how to read balance sheets. So that's helped me, analyze investments and for what I do now. So I'm not sure if I'm actually answering your question, but I never really knew is the point growing up. When you finish, just try different things. And I still remember after 2 years in London, got back, had worked in the stock market, worked in equities, worked with investments, but still didn't have a clear, I wasn't a stockbroker as such. I was an analyst more than anything. And then got back and, 2 years away, you would have thought your mum or dad would have given you a big hug and said, welcome home. But no, mum said, hey, you start a course on Monday. I registered you to be a financial planner. And mum was a financial planner at the time with NAB. So she said, hey, you're doing this course. And, next thing I know, and I'm thankful for that nudge because it actually started the career path that I'm on.
Yeah.
So I did that course and then, got a job, thankfully at Westpac, and then, the rest is history.
You spoke about, I think you said working in London. So was that the only place you worked overseas, and was it a good experience?
It was. I was. How old are you guys now? You're in your early 20s.
I'm 19.
19, even younger. Yeah. So what? It was an experience. Just say it was an experience because I went like everyone. I went to London, and I still remember getting to London, and we would have been like probably early 20s, so 22, 23 years of age. And I still remember getting there, and like so many mates of mine from school and uni and work were also in London. And all living around the same area. It was Clapham, so everyone was around. That's where all the Aussies were in London. And I actually remember thinking, I didn't come all this way to hang out with my mates that I was hanging out with in Australia, and end up getting a job about an hour out of London, but still with the ability to come back into London and have that mate fix. That was pretty much the only work I did was the work that I was qualified in. So I always worked as the first job in London was as an analyst. Actually, the job before that was actually recruitment. So the recruitment guy I went and saw in London ended up giving me a 3-month role in recruitment. So I actually started with him and then went into an analyst role in London. But it was an experience in that it was literally saved money, waited for a weekend or took leave and went to Spain or went to Greece or so it was just it was 2 years of just fun. Like it was work, but work wasn't, it wasn't like only work. I was really just working to make money to travel and get life experiences. So that's all I remember from London. So even getting back from London was like I was in good jobs, I was earning good money, but did I have any of it saved? No. I traveled everywhere, got back, was pretty much still probably saying to mum at that stage, hey, can I live with you because I've spent all my money? And she's like, hey, you're starting a real career. And off you go.
Piss off, yeah, basically. Go get yourself a job. Yeah.
You spoke about, you obviously have to hire people with what you do at the moment, but you've also had to apply for jobs in your life. Do you have any stories for us about awkward moments or job interviews that have just been horrendous, or have they all
gone
been
sideways?
Yeah. Do you know what? Even that stint in London in recruitment, God, I can give you a lot of stories on that side. But so are you talking about when I've hired people, or have I been in
both? Either or.
Do you know what? You just have ones that are just awkward. The ones where I remember as a recruiter, albeit as a short-lived life as a recruiter, you'd have set plays that were generally open questions, therefore allowing the applicant to answer and answer it for as long or short as they wanted. But when I remember a couple of interviews where you ask the open question and you get like a response of less than 3 words, and he's like, oh, what's my next open question? My next open question. It was sort of like you sort of halfway through and you knew that, hey, this applicant's going to be pretty hard to place somewhere because it needs to be just an analyst role where they don't communicate because those communication skills aren't there. So I've had like awkward combos, like, you know, and I think I can, you know, get along with most people and, you know, like connecting with people. Yeah, but sometimes you just have skill sets or people traits that are really introverted or nervous or that, you know, don't show their personalities in those interviews. That also leads to them being pretty awkward. So I had another one that, this is a pretty, and this was, so my name, when you text, and this was back in the preemptive text days where it was just like you type 1 letter, 2 letters, and it gave you the words. This is back in the old days. But I remember having to confirm with someone an appointment for the next morning with an employer. So, and this applicant, you know, like me, was a little bit overweight. So it was sort of like, I went to write, you know, see you tomorrow at 9:15, and I went to, you know, for her to meet the interviewer.
Yeah.
And you know, and I went to write Jace, and Jace, those same letters come out as lard, Lard, and she was big, and I was like, so that was the awkwardest. Now I think at the awkward moment, I said, I'll see you tomorrow 9:15, lard. I was like, I actually just, and I didn't actually. She wrote back. I didn't actually reckon. I actually just sent it, and then got a message going. She wrote back, lard ? That's a bit harsh, and I was like, what are you talking about? I had to read the messages, and I thought, oh my goodness. And then actually got the phone, rang her, and we laughed about it. But
did she get the job?
You know what? She actually did get the job.
Yeah.
In a customer service role, and she was actually really funny about it. She was actually good with that text message, but God, it was awkward. I didn't know what she was talking about. I've looked at it going, she calling me a lard or what? Yeah.
Yeah.
So that was pretty awkward.
Have you ever had to give someone like bad news that you're not getting the job, and they take it the wrong way? Because I applied at Officeworks not too long ago, and I got rejected 3 times, and I only applied once.
Oh goodness. Do you know what? You're always like, even they're always hard conversations like that, and ultimately, even our group, Just That group, generally people we work for us, we hire on the person first. So it's generally we know the person, or they're referred by someone that is in our circle, or is that related to someone in our circle. So they're always hard conversations normally good conversations to hire, but then when they get a better opportunity, or you've got to let them go, they're always hard. They're never easy combos. Yeah. So they happen. So even, you know, we're having one now with someone. It's just a better opportunity. So sometimes you just got to put your hand up and say, you know, in our organization, we love you, we want to hold you, but it's actually better for you to go somewhere else, whether it's to earn more money or career path or what have you. But never easy combos, that's for sure. But if you're honest and just, you know, direct and honest with people, and you know, generally try to do the best thing by them as well, it all works out.
That's good. I like that. Aiden, do you want
to? Well, I have written here. What got you interested in investing in shares and property in the first place?
Yeah, good question. So I think mum being in that world, and my parents didn't have a lot of money, but they worked their asses off and bought property well, and taught us the discipline of, you know, I also remember, and this is probably a sign of things to come, for my 16th birthday, and I'm writing down these things that, you know, that mum taught me so I can teach my kids one day, but she bought me a share, like instead of just getting a present, and I'll never forget this because the share was, back then it was Foster's, FGL. And back then it wasn't just jump on the net, it was look up the paper, see the share code, see where they were, and that was my daily routine. So she bought me $1,000 worth of shares at that stage, and I used to just read and watch that share, and I wasn't allowed to sell it until I was 18. That was the other catch. So, or until it got to the point where I had to explain to mum why I wanted to sell it. Yeah. So that, again, that was part of the learning discipline. Cool. She was trying to teach me. And then because I was working at Coles back then, like every time I saved money, it got me interested in shares. Yeah. So, and not just that share that I had. And mind you, I kept drinking a lot to keep the share price up. That was why I blame mum for being a social butterfly, because the more beer I drank, the more the share price went up. So, but it got me interested in all other the share market. Period. So then every time I had money saved, and it was one of those things. And I say this to our clients. I say this to mates of mine. I just say, look, if money is one of those things that my personality is, if it's there, I'm already planning of ways subconsciously to spend it or do something with it. So that out of mind, out of sight savings, if you like, was what I got into. So I'd save a couple of grand. Instead of spending it, I'd go and buy a share that I was watching on the stock market. And then as you get older, and you always get tips on stocks, and so you'd always be, you know, that line between a blue chips investor, which mum was trying to push me down, and also doing my own research, hearing my own things, and always having a crack at something a bit more speculative at the same time. But that was that's how I got into it. I suppose always been interested in investing, and then like I said, that nudge that I got when I got back from London to get into Westpac financial planning, understood the Westpac, or not Westpac, just financial planning as a and the biggest thing I got out of that is, just as human beings, we need to have goals. Now that even if there's subconsciously we have a goal, we need to be working towards something. So again, just understanding the importance of goal setting and budgeting and getting money out of sight, out of mind, so that people can actually work towards that subconscious goal is something that I learned pretty quickly. And then as I've gotten older, it's just I've and always been, again, always investing in different things. So I don't think there's many businesses or investment classes that I haven't had an investment crack at myself. So just, again, and you never win them all. So, but also just having a crack and learning on the job, if you like, has been I suppose the way I've learned the most is just by having a crack, win some, lose some, understand the benefits, the negatives, and how to get the best outcomes from different investments.
Yeah,
definitely. Would you, if your kids grow up and are interested in shares, would you sort of let them have that trial and error sort of approach, or initially would you sort of try to assist them as much as possible?
Yeah, mentor.
That's another good question. I think I do that. I'll let them become what they want to become, and I don't want to be. And I say this all the time to my wife that we've probably got a bit more wealth than my parents had, but my parents always taught me the discipline of. I'll give you another example. Before I went to London, as soon as I turned 18, I just wanted to move out of home, so I moved into the property. I'm Greek, so I didn't move too far. I moved next door. But then Mum was charging me rent, and I was gutted. I was like, hang on,
what's going on here?
Yeah, you're charging me rent. I should be living with you rent free till I'm 50 was in my head. But anyway, so I started, and then the discipline of what she taught me was the day I got on a plane to fly to London in my early 20s, she gave me back the rent I'd given her plus doubled it. But what she taught me, I suppose, was the discipline of saving money, which I had no discipline back then. So I had it, I'd spend it. So I think back to that moment, and I just think of even those, the way that she was teaching me without forcing me, if you like, and I didn't like everything that was being taught, but then understood now that I'm an adult. So I want to have that sort of mentality with my kids. So I want my kids to not have things given to them on a platter. I want them to earn and respect the dollar that they earn, but then having the liberties and the freedom to invest in things that they think is a good investment. So if I had $1 for every time my younger cousins or friends or said, hey, invest in a Bitcoin, and back then it's like, what's a Bitcoin? But again, it's something that they understood, they read. So I wouldn't want to limit it by saying, hey, you've got to invest in something that I like, because I can do that. So as long as my daughters are at the stage where, hey, if they're interested in something and it's something they're passionate about, then I'd 100% encourage them to invest in everything.
Yeah, absolutely. We're just going to break up the podcast a little bit now. We've learned a little bit about your work, and we'll get back to that a little bit later. But just a couple rapid fire questions that we might throw at you, so the listeners get to know a bit more about you. So first thing you do in the morning?
Right now, it's wake up to a screaming kid and give them some milk. So normally I used to be a just get up and do some exercise in the morning, just to physically and mentally start the day. And that's harder with 2 young kids, but right now it's feed a kid. But in the old days, we get up and do some form of exercise.
Yeah. If you are reading something right now, what is it?
Don't actually have. I've got books actually lined up, and I'll show it to you. We just did a leadership course for Western United actually, which is it's called. So this is my reading to be done. Is more to the game.
Jared Ruffin.
It's actually written by a guy called Cameron Schwab, who's leading our leadership course for Western United. So he's a ex-president of Melbourne, big AFL background, but just more around leadership and basically mantra for your organisation. So that's my to read, but I don't have a lot of time to read. And between these 1,700 episodes of Vertical that I've still got to watch, and 2 young kids and work, there's not a lot of time to read, unfortunately. But that's my to read when I get a chance.
Yeah. Most influential person in your life?
I probably touched on already, but I'd say my parents, both of them in different ways, but definitely, And Dad came to Australia when he was a bit older, so he was 15, 16, and did a course, did a trade and became a jeweler, and my brother's taken over that jewelry business. And Mum was the one that came when she was younger and double degrees and worked in finance and at a time when women, it was really hard to work in business and be successful back then. So I'd say mum and dad, different ways of being influential, but definitely both influential.
Yeah. If you got a do-over in your life, would you do your career over or would you do something else?
Do you know what? I'm touch wood, and one of my mantras is not to look back. So I wouldn't actually do much over, but and again, it's a journey and everything's meant to be. So I look and I think if I had to take work life again, it's all played a role. Like even jobs where I thought, what is this? And I'm not really enjoying it. I learned something from it. So even that recruitment stint, it's the ability. Yeah, there was so many things taken out of that we learned. So I know this is probably a cliche answer, but I probably wouldn't change anything.
No regrets.
Yeah, pretty happy with everything at the moment.
That's good. Favorite alcoholic drink? Wow,
there's another podcast. I own a couple of bars and nightclubs, guys. So,
Oi,
hey, here we go. Hey. We'll be sponsored by a couple of them soon, I reckon. But you know what? I'm maturing with age. So right now I'm on. Obviously, love a good red.
Yeah, good.
Obviously, but I'm at the age where I just can't drink like I used to. So now it's quality over quantity, and just enjoying a good red or a good wine with a good meal and the family.
Good. What subjects did you like or dislike at school?
Good question. I didn't love school, to be honest. I love sport. So I didn't like school.
Recess.
Yeah, exactly. I got good grades and did okay, but I was sort of, if I had to say, was I passionate about any subjects? Probably geography and I liked history. So hence I'm watching this Braveheart series. But history and I'd say economic history and English. Not English, sorry, and geography.
Geography, yeah. Hobbies outside of work.
Sports. So I got a lot of, even our businesses, the JASAC investment group invests a lot in sports. So I got fingers in a lot of different sport investments. So sports, a passion of mine that is also a hobby. So that's the main one. Kids and having such young kids, it's I got a new appreciation for playgrounds and just hanging out with them. So
swing sets and that, yeah,
absolutely. I reckon I never noticed one before I got married and had kids. Now I'm like looking for them. So so hobbies is just young family, just always hanging out with them and just sport and just investments as well. So I'm blessed in that. Now I'm not just we're not really I own a group that advises other people, being the strategic financial group, but the JASAC investment group is something that is my family office and something I invest in. So, and it's a love. It's not like if I had to give advice to anyone, it's going to be do what you love doing. And I know that's cliche as well, but ultimately I love what I do and I own sporting assets. I invest in sporting assets, but I love sport. So, I love socializing, having a good time and entertainment. So I own hospitality businesses. So that mantra of investing in things you're passionate about. So they're also my hobbies, but they're also investments. So I think that's the best way to answer that.
That's good. And just the last one, your favorite actor?
Well, I don't know any of these Turkish actors, so I can't say them. But I'd say I just love things with Matt Damon. I just find Matt Damon.
Yeah.
Yeah, I just find him interesting. He goes for movies that actually have a message behind them as well, which I like. And he's just a quality actor. So I'd say Matt Damon's my man. Yeah,
Matt Damon's pretty good. You spoke about your different investments. Did you ever have like a big loss or win early in your investment career that you were like, whoa, like this was good, this was bad?
Yeah.
And if you want, you can share what that investment was.
Yeah, you know what? Absolutely. And they're all relative. So when I'm your age, losing $1,000, $2,000 was the biggest hit of my life. It was a big hit. So and as you get older and your wealth increases, then there's one. I'll give you an example of one that it was a turnaround. So I'm actually really proud of this one, but it was on the verge there of being the biggest hit of my life or my investment journey. But it turned out to be a good outcome. And I'll just preface that by saying, no, if you're just investing in things where you think you're going to win all the time, then you're going to be very limited. So stick to cash and stick to earning interest in the bank, because the reality is the more you want to earn, the more risk is associated with that earn. So I'll always say, hey, have your blue chip investments and be conservative with a portion. But then at the same time, the higher the return, the higher the risk, and don't die wondering. So that's the preface. And then I'll say the one investment that was one that I invested in a little while ago that got to the stage where, and when you're investing on something that's on the ASX or ASX listed, you're limited on the information. You're limited to what the board of directors tell the market. So we invested in one that we did a lot of research on, but it was based on information that in hindsight, probably wasn't accurate, and it probably wasn't the best information. So we invested on information that the market got and was going backwards at a pretty rapid rate. So got to the point where, and I don't like losing money on anything. So I kept, basically keeping the company alive, finding out what was going right and wrong with that company, ended up taking over that company, becoming the largest shareholder and the lender. So we ended up having to lend the company money to keep it alive. So this is an investment that would have lost, let's call it a lot of money. Let's call it $1 million if it went down, 2 million, to the point where we kept it alive with another 5 million, and then ended up going and raising 35 million. And now it's relisted on the stock exchange. It's gone up 400, 500%. Is doing really well. It's actually a company called Toys R Us. So So Toys R Us is now on the ASX. It's a share code TOY. Owns Babies R Us. Owns Toys R Us, and I'm still one of the largest shareholders, and pretty bullish on it. So, but that was one that, again, putting into relativity, it would have been one that most people were saying this is dead, let it go.
Yeah.
And again, the ability to still have belief in something you do and turn it around, and now it's actually going really well. Again, sticks it up a few people at the same time, and thanks those investors that it was mainly us, but most of the investors that stayed on the journey are now trying to getting the fruits of that investment.
Gee, that's pretty good. You resurrected basically a whole company.
Yeah, pretty much. It was a journey. Like I won't bore you with that one, but it was like it was pretty tough. Like 5-6 years there, where in effect you're leaving it to others that you don't know, to the point where once you lift up the bonnet and see what's exactly going on, and still having the ability to see an outcome and getting the outcome was rewarding, but at the same time could have been a massive loss. And prior to that, there's other investments that again, when it's speculative and you're relying on others, you're having a punt on a story and hoping that whatever the management can do is takes that story to make it happen. And that doesn't always happen. So especially, before that, I've lost lots of money on, within investments that, not lost, I wouldn't say lost, like on paper, they might be down, but there might be investments that, don't reach their potential, and you decide to get out of it because it's not going where, on the journey you thought it would. So again, I say this to everyone, as long as you're winning more than you're losing, as long as you've got your investment percentages when it comes to blue chip investments, to speculative investments, to high growth investment, that mix right, then don't be afraid to have a go, and you're not going to win them all. That's for sure.
Absolutely. Good advice.
How did you get to be a player and talent manager? So you work with Hemisphere now, is that right?
Yeah, that's right. So so the JASAC group, so the JASAC is my family office. So that's my two names, Jason, but my middle name's also Zach. So that's where that brand came from.
Okay.
And then, so we've got sport and entertainment portfolios of businesses. So, so Western United is one of those. The A-League is the Newcastle Jets. We own a share of Newcastle Jets in the A-League. So always looking for opportunities in sport. Where it started for the talent management business was on the financial advisory side. Actually, we were advising quite a few players that, in my mind, we were doing what I thought a player agent should be doing, i.e. teaching a kid to save money, helping them at auctions, finding properties, doing more the investment side of managing, especially a kid who's earning a lot of money. So, some of the talent that comes in might be a 17, 18-year-old, and they could earn, millions and millions and millions of dollars over the next, 10, 15, 20 years. And ultimately, that's where it started, was just saying, hey, a lot of managers under the old model were just more occupied with getting a contract, which is, in whatever sport they play, whether it's AFL, whether it's soccer, whether it's whatever sport. And then outside of that was endorsement deals. So find them endorsement deals, and manager places that with a talent, and you get paid a percentage of that endorsement deal. So started doing it with a handful of players that we were advising, just because we didn't think it was done properly. Then went through and invested in a couple of businesses. Had a pretty traumatic investment, it was an investment, but had a pretty traumatic experience with the wrong partner. But ended up, I found out about that through a few players that stayed with us. We ended up having about 10 players that were just I suppose leaders and good quality human beings. That was the only way we found out that the ex-business partner was probably doing the wrong thing. They're the likes of Scott Pendlebury. I owe him a lot. Jack Zeeble. James Kelly, ex-Geelong, a lot, I'd say just good human beings who I was overseas at the time, got a call to say, hey, this is what's going on. And then so that was a pretty traumatic experience. And then I look back with all the investments that looked like they were going bad are actually my best performing investments. So from there, I went and partnered with or acquired a group called a guy called Alex McDonald through McDonald Sports Management. So Alex and again, from having a bad experience with someone where ultimately what it come back to is I didn't know that person at all, to in effect courting, I'll say, Alex for about a year. Got to know everything about him, his family, and just making sure he was the right person to come into our talent management business. And then Jasak, our business, acquired Alex. And now I look back 5-6 years on, Hemisphere now you'll have close to 100 AFL players. We've smashed this year's draft, and the drafts of the last 3 years have we've got some of the best kids playing and some of the best kids that will be playing the game. Yeah. And we've got the right people running that business. So we own the majority of it as Jasak Investments. And then we've got some really, really good people running that business that also have a stake in it. So we're all on the same page as far as growing it. And more importantly, we're all aligned as we've got good humans and good morals and work together amongst the group. So that's how I got into it. And it aligns with the sports businesses and the financial services business in that, what do these kids need, or that these people need that are earning a lot of money that don't have necessarily the knowledge and the skill set to invest, is just the right specialist investment managers around them. And that's where, one of the other businesses we've got in financial services is we've got a good team of accountants, a good team of lenders, a good team of financial advisors, a good team of investment advisors that actually look after money that not just the athletes bring in, but all our client base that generally our client base under the strategic financial group, are big income earners, are looking for good advice, tax-effective advice, and ultimately good investments.
Jeez. You spoke about your relationship with Scott Pendlebury. His contract was in the news for a while when his contract was up in the air. Were you behind the scenes in that, or was that someone else?
It's for the last one he just did, the 2-year extension.
The 2-year extension, yeah.
So no, that was all Alex and Scott. So yeah. What I've tried to do is I invest in a lot of different things, and then if I'm needed, I'm there. But in effect, try not to be in any business.
Okay.
So with Western Melbourne Group and Western United, it's probably the enormity of the project, because it's a big property investment and a sports investment, means that until we get the transaction to the point where we're comfortable, I'm hands-on with things. So when Hemisphere first started, I was hands-on with it, but now it's at a stage where good people running it, good processes, and I'm not in that business, but really, really close mates with Scott, and speak to him a lot, and we bounce off each other a lot. And I'll use Scott as an example because he lets me use him as the example. But where Scott was when he was a young kid to where he is now in his 30s, back in the day, I'd like to think that it was a mentor relationship in helping him establish himself financially. But always, he's just a inquisitive guy and wants to learn. So now in his 30s, like we'll bounce off, we'll message each other 20 times a week and bounce off each other. But I'm proud of the fact that he doesn't. We're not a management group that had to spoon feed them and then they finish their career where we can't make money off them and then they're off to their own devices. Scott will stop playing sport at some stage and will still be part of our group under the Jasak group or strategic financial group. And but he can stand up on his own 2 feet and is financially more than independent. But it's more of that mentor relationship we've got. So to answer your question, no, I didn't do his last 2-year deal, but bounced off with Scott and Alex and got to an outcome where it was good for Scott, good for Collingwood Footy Club, and good for Hemisphere.
Absolutely. For people who are watching on YouTube, you can see that Jason's wearing the Western United kit, and he's got the signed jerseys in the background. I see that. Yeah. So you're the, I don't want to put it like, you're the chairman of Western United, and why did you decide to kind of bring that team together? And
so I'm passionate about sport, all sport, like I said, but soccer in particular. So my life ambition is to go to every World Cup that Australia's in my lifetime. I'm 4 from 4, so I've gone every World Cup that I could have whilst Australia was in them.
Pretty good.
So it's always been a passion. And then so I'm chairman, and Jasak Investments is the largest shareholder of Western Melbourne Group as well. So the passion of football. So we had to win a license. We won that license about 2 and a bit years ago to come into the A-League. If you told me that we're going to be hit with a pandemic and Foxtel was going to pull the pin and all the dramas we've had with sport, football, soccer in this country over the last 2 years, would I have made the decision? Maybe not. But you know, ultimately, soccer as a sport is, I think it's about to really take the platform and catapult, because we've got a proper broadcast partner in Channel 10 now that I want to say proper. It's just free to wear, so it's just more eyes on the game, and they're backed by CBS Viacom in America, so huge, one of the best partners we could have hoped for, and then a bit of private equity coming into the game as well. So I think football. Soccer, which is I'll only call it football, guys, if that's all right. So AFL and football are the sports that I love. Whereas football, highest participation rate, but it's always been like the ugly sister. It's never had support, or the support that should have had from the government, albeit it's the one that AFL gets so much money, and kudos to the AFL. They just play that political and funding card really, really well. Whereas soccer is highest participation sport in the country. Especially when you've got a lot of immigrants in a country like Australia, it's the best way to integrate immigrants into the country, because everyone knows football globally when you come in. So to answer your question, my passion for soccer was the leader. It's also crossed over to one of our other key investment pillars under JASAC and strategic, which is the property side. So it's and this is a blight on the state of Victoria. There's only one rectangular stadium in the state of Victoria capable of holding an A-League game. That's Amy Park. So outside of that, they're all oval stadiums that go to all the AFL clubs, mostly government funded, where you just sit there and you think, hang on. And we play games and because we had no real other options really, was to play at Geelong and Whitten Oval and Ballarat, but they're all ovals. And it's not really, from a spectator perspective, it's not great for a fan. Like soccer should be about the atmosphere and being over football. So it should be about being over the ground and close to the action. So that's why we went on this program to deliver our own rectangular stadium in the west and stand. Yarraville, you're in our region, so the northwest of Victoria is Western United, and we're at the forefront of trying to bring back geographic tribalism, which is where football gets its passion from. So if you travel anywhere around the world, I can promise you, you can bring up football, and the person you're speaking to will be able to have a good communication, even if you can't speak the language around football. You go anywhere and mention Ronaldo or Messi, it'll lead to a conversation. But on my travels, you meet someone from Leeds in Melbourne, and it's they'll generally follow Leeds United. Why? Because their dad's from Leeds and they were born in Leeds, or whether it's Manchester United or Seville, or it's normally back to where you were born or where your parents were born or where you grew up. So that's what we're trying to bring in now, is say, hey, we're Western United, we're the northwest of Victoria, and bring in that true tribalism for football, which comes back to geography and where you're born, where you're raised, and ultimately grow the game that way.
Absolutely. I just wanted to say, so you go to probably nearly all the games or most of the games. If you are not liking a player's performance, do you have the ability to drop one of them or not?
No, I try to stay out of that. Sam, but good question. It's hard because I'm so much more comfortable just being in the stands with my mates and being a fan of the game.
Yeah.
So when you're chairman, even more so, you've got to show less. Someone misses a goal, that you're thinking,
you can't be like, oh,
yeah, you can't be doing that. So we leave the football department separate to the board and the exec team. So but we do you know what, we're especially this year, we've got such a good squad of players and just good blokes as well. So and we've now expanded into the women's game. So we've got a women's league next year. So we just can't wait to grow the female game. We'll have under 8 boys, under 8 girls, all the way through to 2 teams in the national competition for men's and women's. So we're just pretty excited about the journey where we're going on.
Very good.
Can you tell us a little bit more about the Windham Stadium at all? As in, like, how much is it expected to see, and when will it be finished roughly?
Yeah, so it's a really big project, and it's something called a public-private partnership with Windham City Council. So there are actually these public-private partnerships in sport are quite common overseas, but it's actually the first one in Australia, believe it or not. So David Beckham's doing one in Miami now, and there's quite a few of them. And the model came from the US. So my wife's American. She's from Milwaukee. Just seeing how they do sport and property and integrate into the communities where the idea came from. And then we're blessed that Windham, just as a council, just forward-looking, and ultimately, especially now with a pandemic and coming out of a pandemic, government dollars there's just not much of it. So it needs public-private money, but we need the public support to grow. So the stadium, we're looking at a 15,000 seat capacity. The works are actually starting now. So we're starting the the site that we've got, it's not just the stadium. It's a 62.5 hectare piece of land, which is 150 acres, zoned residential, commercial, and sport, community, and health. And it's a big project. So just to give you an example, if I just had a piece of land and I had gas, water, electricity, I can go get a permit from the council. It might take me a year, build within a year or two, and you're done within 3 years. Where we've got a site that's, the size of, I can't remember how many MCGs, but a lot. And ultimately there's no power there. So the first steps is running the services to the site, and that journey is starting. So gas, water, electricity ranges, I think, between 500 meters and 2 kilometers away from our site. Once we've got that, then it's pretty ambitious, the time frame that we're hoping for, but we're being in partnership with the council, so we don't have hopefully as many the red tape that you normally go through when you're developing. We're hoping for 2023 to be ready for at least have our stadium and a few of the surrounding property assets up and running by mid to late 2023.
Very good.
Nice. Well, there you go. We've got a bit of a deeper question now. So
Okay. Love deep.
Put your thinking cap on.
Yeah, get your thinking cap on.
I want to do really quickly. This is a live podcast. I've just got an Uber Eats delivery guy for at the door saying, "Where are you?" Let me text Angie upstairs.
Yeah, it's all right.
We've picked it up, so we're back. We're back live.
Sweet.
There we go.
Sorry, that at home. It's all right.
Well, I'm sure this will kind of relate, but we want to know: can money buy happiness?
Yeah, awesome question. You know what? I don't reckon it can, because, and again, it comes down to your definition of happiness. But I work with and have got lots of stories around people that have got so much wealth, but why not have the things that bring true wealth? So, touch wood, I've been married once and still married, but if you haven't got your kids, like I look at my kids now, and that's happiness.
Yeah.
And even having 2 years of lockdown, all the stuff that I thought, like, doing my Nobu lunches on Friday, I thought, gee, does it get better than this? It does. But ultimately, that's true happiness. It's relative to what you put to happiness. And I could have no money now and still be hanging out with my kids and doing the stuff that we do, and I'm as happy as can be. So it makes it easier. Like, obviously, I've had some pretty unbelievable experiences in life that I was, fortunate enough to be able to afford. But I've had just as many happy times, and it's cost me nothing. So yes, so I'm saying sitting on the fence with that one. I know it's not but yeah, it makes it easier, but it's not the be all and end all. Not for me anyway.
Yeah. Aiden, do you reckon money buys happiness?
I was thinking about this in the shower 5 minutes before we started. And I was sort of thinking that it can buy happiness, but it's only temporary every time you do buy it. So obviously, you got your Uber Eats order here and that costs money and you'd be happy while you're eating it. But it's not going to last
and you
forever.
put on the weight and you think, I've got to lose weight now.
Exactly.
Exactly.
All right, well, that's fair enough. You spoke a lot about your family and how important they are to you. So we understand you're Greek. In terms of family gatherings, is it a whole like feast? Like, does everyone get together and just have a great time, chat shit, kind of? Like, what's that like?
Yeah, do you know what? And as people get married and have their own kids, where do you stop that organic?
It just keeps on.
We're a big family, and we've got two sides of that family. So we have this combo. So everyone has the combos over Christmas and what have you, but we're the family that hosts it. Okay. So yeah, it's a big Greek feast, absolutely. But the beautiful thing is that I've got aunties that I can tell you what their set play is of what they're bringing,
like the salad or something like that.
Yeah, like whether it's a pasticcio, which is a Greek dish, or a lasagna, whatever it is. Everyone plays their roles. My point. So our family, especially now everyone's having kids, has grown to the point where we wouldn't survive in a pandemic with 100 cap. Put it that way. So. We're hoping it's going to have more than 100 over Christmas, so we can have the whole family here. But it's funny, everyone plays their role. So I know, and all my cousins know, and all our family, if that auntie or uncle doesn't bring that dish, they've got something to answer for. So yeah, they're big. They're absolutely a big feast. Dad set plays the lamb and the gyros.
The head honcho.
What he delivers, and if we don't deliver that, he'd be out. And then everyone else brings a dish that makes it easier, but they're actually the best time. So again, going back to, if we had no money, everyone would still be doing that, bringing that dish. And there's some of the happiest times that I can picture, especially with family and friends, and the big Greek feast that we have every event that we can.
That's very good. Just for our listeners out there, and even for me and Aiden, is there any like just simple financial advice that you'd give us if we were to invest in some things going forward?
Yeah, I'd say that the discipline, and it's not easy to get the discipline of saving money. So, and I think what different strategies work. Some people can just say, "Hey, I'm going to save $1,000 a month and do it." What worked for me was an out of sight, out of mind strategy. If it's not there, and I put it into something, even if it means I'm pushing myself to the point where I've got no money in my account, it's not there. I can't spend it, and then I work and more comes in. So I'll say that initial savings discipline is really, really, really important. Then just even having a subconscious goal, and I'll speak about that a lot. So when you're starting, it might be to get to 10 grand. It might be to get to a number, and when you hit a number, and it's just a subconscious goal. So write it down once and top draw it, and don't revisit it or revisit it. But at least you know that in the back of your mind, I want to get to a number. And then once you've got that, and it's all relative, but I'd say don't be afraid, and I've touched on the podcast, don't be afraid to, if I've got X amount of dollars, to have 60% of it, 70% of it in stable blue chip type investments, and then invest in things that you understand or have read up on and researched on. And don't be afraid to, if it's higher risk, higher reward, don't be afraid to have a percentage of that in that asset class, because I still think back to, I started, that stock market journey that I refer to of, Foster's shares and actually liking beer and understanding, hey, what that business does. So it sells alcohol. These are the margins. This is how much profit it makes. And how does it grow its revenue and earnings and profits and share price? It comes down to understanding the business. So I know the alcohol business really well now, but I'll think back to that. But whatever that business is, it might be even I don't understand Bitcoin that much, but I've sat with people that explain it to me over and over again, to the point where, I put a bit into Bitcoin because it sounded not a lot, but I put a sum into it because, someone who understands the space more than I do explained it in a way where I understood it, and I thought, it's worth a crack. Yeah. But I was also knew worth a crack could mean it's worth zero. So that's my advice is, especially when you're starting, sometimes getting that 10% of your portfolio that's more speculative, could lose, but could also gain at a much higher rate than the blue chip money that's sitting in cash. And I'll put my disclaimer in. Not everyone's got the same risk profile or investment profile. So again, some people might be just ultra conservative, where you losing $1 just isn't on their spectrum. So again, that isn't a bad thing. It just means that they're going to the discipline of saving money and investing in things, and that growth rate will be the tortoise in the hare, and you'll still get to your goal. It just might be a little bit slower.
Yeah.
Alrighty. Well, I think that's all we've got time for this episode. So I want to say thanks to you, Jason, very much for your time, giving it up for us today.
My pleasure, Aidan. Thanks, Sam, for getting me on.
Anytime. That was fantastic. I think a lot of people probably learned a lot about investing in general, and just about you and what you do and what you're involved with. And I think it was very interesting and very informative.
Awesome. It was my pleasure, and happy to do it again anytime.
Thank you very much.
And we'll see everyone next week.
All your listeners out there, if you're in the West, and if you're not, get Western United memberships are on sale, and hopefully come to one of our games and grow with our brand.
Get on it, Western United.
We'll get around them. Very good.
See you guys.
See you later.
See ya.